People think being a park ranger is all sunsets and campfires, the serene life, the kind of job that puts you in touch with nature, where every day feels like an adventure. Fresh air, hiking trails, the occasional lost hiker you get to save and become a local hero for. It sounds good, doesn't it? But the truth is, most days aren't like that. You spend a lot of time alone out there. The kind of alone where you don't just feel it in your body, but in your bones. You walk the same trails over and over again, checking the same markers, chasing off teenagers trying to have their parties where they're not supposed to, clearing branches after a storm. It all starts to blend together, you know? You fall into a rhythm with the forest. You become part of it. The forest has a heartbeat. You get to know its pulse. There's a certain way the trees groan in the wind, the way the birds sing, or more often, don't sing. There's a kind of quiet that fills the air. The weight of it presses down on your chest, and after a while, you start to notice the little things. The sound of footsteps when you're alone on a trail, the way the leaves whisper when there's no breeze. You think nothing will surprise you. But then, something changes. You can feel it in your gut, that sense of unease creeping up your spine. It's like a thread is pulled in the world, and you can't trace it. You just know. And you can't shake the feeling that something's wrong, even if you can't put your finger on it. I worked in hollow pines for 6 years. That old forest has a way of getting under your skin, not in the way a city gets to you, with noise and constant motion, but in the way a deep, dark sea pulls at your feet when you try to walk along the shore. It's ancient, so old. You can feel the weight of it in the air, like the trees have seen centuries of storms, watched the world change, and stood silent. The kind of place where the trees are so dense, they don't let the sunlight in. The forest floor stays in perpetual shadow. The mist, it wraps around your ankles, almost like it wants to drag you deeper. The kind of forest that breathes, and sometimes you can hear it. I don't care what the brochures say or what people tell you. People talk about hollow pines. They don't live in it. Locals whisper about the forest. Always have. They'll tell you stories about lights that flicker between the trees, bright as stars, but gone when you look at them. About voices, soft and sweet, calling you off the trail, making you forget where you are. They say you hear things out there, things that aren't meant to be heard. People laugh about it. Rangers joke about it. It becomes part of the landscape, a joke, a myth. I'll admit, I didn't believe it. Not really. Yeah, I'd heard the stories. Sure, there were nights when the wind made the trees creak in weird ways, and maybe there were times I could have sworn I saw a flash of something moving just outside the corner of my eye. But nothing out of the ordinary. Until that night. Until Trail 17. I should have paid attention sooner. The signs were all there. The way the trail felt. Off. It wasn't just the overgrown brush or the way the shadows seemed to grow deeper the farther in I went. It was the feeling you get when you're somewhere you shouldn't be. Something in the air, thick, like something's been sitting there too long, festering in the dark. The kind of place where you don't just walk. You move quickly, like you're constantly trying to outrun something. I thought I was being paranoid. I thought I was just tired, but I should have known better. Because once you're in there, once you really feel the woods watching you, the game changes. You can never look at it the same way again. It was supposed to be a routine sweep. Trail 17 was technically closed, too dangerous, too overgrown. But a policy said we had to check it once a month, just to make sure. I've been doing this job long enough to know when something's off. You get used to the rhythm of things, the rustling of leaves, the way the wind moves through the trees. And when it changes, you feel it. That morning, I had just finished checking the usual trail signs and markings when I flipped on my radio and called in. "This is Ranger 6. Ranger 6, Trail 17. Routine sweep. All clear so far." I had to do it. Standard protocol. I said it almost mechanically, every time. The same thing. Same words. It was like I was just going through the motions, you know. But it was important. No one ever told you. But when you're out there, you're not just patrolling the land. You're reporting every step, every crack in the trail. Copy that Ranger 6. Proceed for routine sweeping. So I moved on. I didn't think anything of it. It was just part of the job. I radioed in, and then I went about my business. But as I continued down the trail, I couldn't shake this feeling. Something felt wrong. It wasn't the trail, not directly, but there was this sense that I wasn't alone. I chalked it up to nerves. Trail 17 was isolated, and sometimes the isolation gets to you. I pushed on. Maybe too hard now that I think about it. I was trying to distract myself from that gnawing sensation. But then I came across something. A campsite. 3 tents. Dead campfire. All of it fresh. Bright-colored gear. New coolers. But no sign of anyone. It looked like they just vanished. There wasn't a single footprint around. Not a bag, not a backpack, no shoes or food. Just those tents standing alone in the mist. The radio in my hand felt heavier all of a sudden. I had to check in again. Standard procedure, right? I took a deep breath and pressed the button. A heavier, almost mechanical tone escapes my tongue. Ranger 6, Trail 17. No sign of campers at the site. All clear. Continuing sweep. But as soon as I finished the line, the static crackled. I didn't hear the usual reply. Instead, there was something else. I figured it was just a weak connection. Maybe a gust of wind messing with the frequency. But then, I heard it. That voice. The radio popped again. The voice, my voice, came through. Ranger 6, Trail 17. No sign of campers at the site. All clear. Continuing sweep. It was exactly the same as what I had just said. I didn't know what to make of it at first. I figured maybe someone was messing with me. A prank. Some of the other rangers liked to have a laugh. But the thing was, the voice that came through wasn't just a repeat. It was distorted, twisted somehow, not just a radio static. It was like someone had taken my words and molded them into something else. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was in my throat. I moved closer to the tents, trying to shake the feeling that was creeping up my spine. Air was thick, heavier now. The trees seemed to lean in closer, and the mist had shifted, curling around the edges of the clearing like it had a life of its own. I looked around, trying to focus, but everything felt wrong. That's when I heard it again. The radio buzzed, and then that voice, my voice, but distorted. Ranger 6, Trail 17. No sign of campers at the site. All clear, continuing sweep. It wasn't the same. It was dragging now. The words, like they were being pulled through the static, like they were fighting to get out. I wanted to answer. I wanted to shout back. Tell it that I was here, that I was still me. But I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I stood there frozen, radio hanging limp in my hand. Behind me, something moved. A little girl, barefoot, her white dress stained with dirt and mud, her hair thick and matted, hanging in ropes over her face, like she hadn't seen the sun in days, and smiling. That smile, too wide, too wrong, like it didn't belong on her face. Too many teeth. She pointed into the woods. With a soft, trembling tone, she spat out, "Help! Over there!" But wrong. It was rehearsed, like she'd been told to say it, over and over. I couldn't move. I should have run, but my legs wouldn't work. I stood there staring at her, at that smile. What was she? Who was she? I should have shouted, called out to anyone. But instead, I took a step forward. I don't know why. It was like something was pulling me, drawing me in. That's when I saw them. Figures. More figures, moving in the mist behind her. Tall ones, thin ones, hunched over like they were twisting out of shape. Some were crawling, dragging themselves across the ground. Their bodies twisted in ways I couldn't unsee, like broken marionettes, bent, snapped, and wrong. Their faces, God, their faces, smeared like wet clay, like they weren't even real. And then I saw it. One of them wore a ranger uniform. My uniform, but the face, it wasn't my face, it was sliding, slipping off the skull. I could feel my heart thudding, hammering in my chest. Everything inside me screamed to run, to get out. But my feet wouldn't move. She was still smiling, that wide, terrible grin. And she didn't speak again, just pointed. I should have run then. I should have sprinted back to the station. But I couldn't. I couldn't tear myself away. What was wrong with her? Why was she here? Why was she still smiling? Where is your family? My words came out weak, stupid, but I couldn't stop myself. The moment I said it, I knew it was the wrong thing to say. It didn't matter. Her smile didn't fade. It stretched wider. That voice, it was wrong. It was wrong. Help, over here. Her voice. It was no longer just a little girl's voice. It had something dark in it. A hiss, a low rasp, like it was fighting to break free from something deeper. I wasn't looking at a child anymore. Not really. I wasn't sure what I was looking at, and then the others moved closer. The ones in the mist. They were getting closer. Closer than I had realized. They weren't human. Not even close. The tall one. Its arms were too long, too thin. The hunched one. Its spine bent at an unnatural curve, like it wasn't meant to stand. The crawling ones. Their faces hidden beneath the tangle of hair and the folds of skin. But I could feel their eyes on me, watching. The one in the uniform. The one who looked like me. It was closer now. I could see it clearly. The skin. It was peeling away from the skull, slipping, like it wasn't even part of it anymore. I turned. I ran. God, I ran. But the forest wasn't right. It was twisting. It was closing in. Branches scraped at my face, tearing at my skin. Roots gripped my boots, tugging, pulling me down. The forest wasn't just a place anymore. It was a maze, a trap. It was alive, reaching for me, drawing me deeper. And the voices, the whispers were louder now. At first they were soft, faint. But now they were calling my name. I could hear them behind me. I could feel them getting closer. Their footsteps, dragging, snapping branches. Their hands, oh God, their hands were reaching for me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I didn't care if they were right behind me. I didn't care if I was about to die. I just needed to get away. Somehow, I made it back to the station. I slammed the door behind me. I locked it. I didn't even care if it could hold. I shoved every piece of furniture in front of it. Desks, chairs, shelves, everything. I sat in the dark, trembling, listening for the sound of their feet on the porch, the scratching against the walls, the whispering voices. I couldn't stop hearing them. They were out there. They were still there, just beyond the walls, just beyond the glass. I could feel them. I could feel them waiting. I didn't sleep. Not a second. Not even when the sun finally rose. I didn't look outside. I didn't dare. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours. Maybe more. The walls felt like they were closing in, the shadows stretching long and dark. Even as daylight crept through the cracks in the blinds, I could hear them, scratching, knocking. Their whispers, so faint, just out of reach, like they were waiting for me to slip. I must have passed out, somewhere between the knocks and the whispers, somewhere in the blur of panic, exhaustion, and dread. I woke up. It was still dark. My body aching, heavy, like I'd been holding my breath the whole time. Morgan, you there? I stumbled to my feet, dazed. I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep. They must have arrived sometime after I passed out. Hey, take it easy. You're exhausted. You've been through a lot. Exhausted. I wanted to argue, to say it wasn't that, but I couldn't, not yet. They didn't see what I saw. They couldn't have, even if they tried. It's not something you can explain, not something you can just tell someone and expect them to understand. I saw what I saw. I'm the only one who knows, the only one who will ever truly know. I know this. They followed me back. They were patient, biding their time, waiting for the right moment. I didn't hear them at first. They didn't make a sound. But they were there. They always are, in the shadows, just beyond what you can see. I see them sometimes, when the light is low and my eyes play tricks on me, reflected in windows like faint silhouettes, always a step behind, always watching. At the end of long hallways, standing just far enough out of reach, where I can't be sure if they're real, if they're just a trick of the mind. But I know. I feel it in my bones. They're there. And when I take out the trash at night, I see them again, standing just at the tree line, their figures barely visible in the dark, hidden in the corners of my vision. Always waiting, always watching. It's like they've been there all along, waiting for me to notice. Listen closely, I've learned the hard way. Maybe you won't have to. If you see them, if you feel them, just walk away. Don't stare, don't question. Don't let your mind drift to what could be. It's easy to do that, to wonder if it's all in your head, but it's not. If you ever feel them following you back, if you start seeing them in windows, at the end of hallways, or just beyond the tree line, you have to trust yourself. You have to know that the moment you stop, the moment you hesitate, they'll close in. You'll never be free. So my advice is simple. If you're ever out in the woods and you hear someone you know calling your name or see a little girl asking for help, just keep moving, keep walking, keep your eyes straight ahead. And if you feel like something's there, don't answer, don't look. Trust that it isn't there, and don't stop until it is.